Their appearance is like that of humans, but their skin resembles that of lizards, and their eyes are completely black. My name is Zain. I live in a small village far from cities and civilization. You could say, in short, we live in isolation from the modern world today. We are about to welcome a new baby. My wife is screaming in the room. Of course, there is no doctor with her. I told you. I come from a very underdeveloped village. She has a woman with her responsible for assisting women during childbirth in the village named Naji. I feel extremely tense. You probably think it is a natural tension because I will be a father soon, but this is not the cause of my tension. I am not particularly worried about my wife. The truth is, I am anxious because tonight is a night of a full moon, and they always take the newborn that comes on this night. The sound of the baby crying causes my heart to race. Nadine comes out of the room and tells me to go in to check on my wife. When I enter the room, I find my wife crying heavily, holding our newborn. I approach her and sit beside her, trying to soothe her. She says with a voice full of tears, "They will definitely take him." I don't know what to say. I tell her that I will protect him from everything, and that they will never take him from me. But what if I fail? I am not sure I can do it. So I preferred to remain silent. I held him in my arms, looked at him, and cursed myself. What kind of father am I? I cannot protect my child from a danger I know to be inevitable. I surely do not deserve to be a father. In a desperate attempt, we agreed to stay awake all night and not allow anyone to take our baby. After midnight, we are still awake, and the little one is sleeping. I feel a severe cold in the room. The windows are tightly shut. My wife covers the sleeping child in her arms and grips my arm tightly, knowing they are here. Yes, this cold is one of the signs of their presence. I began to feel my body numb. I do not want to lose consciousness. Everything starts to fade gradually. I drown into darkness. The sound of the baby's screams. "Wake up, you sleeper." That was the voice of Sheikh Salim. I heard him repeating incomprehensible phrases, and among the phrases was one clear, "Wake up, you sleeper." I woke up in panic, finding the child not in my wife's arms. I quickly woke her up and rushed to the courtyard of the house, finding the door open and the child on the ground crying loudly. I approached him and lifted him into my arms, finding Sheikh Salim standing at the door outside, drawing boundaries around the house with white-colored dirt, repeating incomprehensible phrases, along with Nadine. It seems she brought him, for all of us here know what happens when a child is born on this night. But I was astonished by their presence outside tonight. I still remember what happened last time. Someone went out on a night like this, and we heard our neighbors' screams, but no one dared to go out. In the morning, we found him torn to pieces with some of his limbs missing, and his wife crying by his side. We learned from her that he was going to the doctor to get medicine for his sick child, and she had warned him not to go out. But the poor man thought he could return quickly before they sensed him. Sheikh Salim looked at me sharply and said, "Under no circumstances leave." My wife was gripping my arm tightly and looking at the little one with pity. Sheikh Salim kept chanting those phrases until we heard a scream that shook the house. And then Sheikh Salim took a step inside the house without touching the white dirt, and told me that this barrier would keep them away from the house. But we must not leave the house for 7 days. Well, 7 days. And then my son will stay with me forever. But those 7 days were not easy or simple to pass. At night, the sound of screams outside was terrifying. People called our names, and one day I heard Sheikh Salim outside. He was supposed to have gone back to his village. He is not from our village, but he comes here whenever he can to help the people of the village because he knows about these matters. By good fortune, he came on the day my dear child was born. I opened the main door and found him standing 2 meters away. He said to me, "Come out, Zain, and bring your son. Bring me an amulet. It will protect him from all dangers." But Sheikh Salim, didn't you tell me not to go out until after 7 days? My son, the danger has passed. Today is the 4th since your child was born, and nothing has happened. This has never happened before. Bring him to me and don't be afraid." One of them placed their hand on my shoulder. I turned to find my wife saying, "What brought you out at this hour? Why did you open the door? Do you want to go out?" I told her no, but Sheikh Salim wanted the child to read to him an incantation. "Look, here he is." Sheikh Salim spoke. "Come here, my boy, and bring the child." My wife said, "And who told you he is Sheikh Salim?" Then she shouted, "You, if you are Sheikh Salim, come and cross the earth barrier." Sheikh Salim looked at her with hostile eyes, then let out a scream that shattered the silence and disappeared instantly. We locked the door and hurried to the room where the little one was sleeping, and the 7 days passed this way. The 7th day arrived. Neighbors and villagers gathered at our home to celebrate the new baby. I had to name him today, so I named him Naji, because he was the first to escape from them in the village. As days passed, Naji grew up, and after 5 years, my wife gave birth to our new baby girl. Her birth was on a normal day far from the full moon, so we were very happy, and it did not require the hardships we faced after Naji was born. On the 7th day of her birth, I named her Lena, and one day my wife asked me to take Naji with me to work because he was distracting her from household chores. I agreed and left Lena with her. By the way, I work as a woodcutter. I go to the forest, cut trees, and bring firewood to the village. I went with Naji to the forest and asked him to sit on a nearby rock, and as soon as I finish chopping the trees, we will go right away. I was so engrossed in my work that I completely forgot that Naji was with me. I abruptly turned around and looked at the rock where he was sitting, and I didn't find him. I started calling, "Naji, Naji," with no response. I ran through the forest like a madman searching for him. I heard his voice from afar. "Father, father." I turned and found him running toward me from a distance. I ran to him and hugged him tightly. He was drenched in sweat and appeared very frightened. I asked him, "Naji, what's wrong, my boy? Where did you go? Why didn't you tell me?" He said in a frightened voice, "Father, let's go from here, and I will tell you on the way." As we returned, he began to tell me, "When I was sitting on the rock, I saw someone hiding behind a big tree and he motioned for me to follow him. I followed him, but I lost track of him. Then he suddenly appeared behind one of the trees again, and he motioned for me to follow him. He was wearing a long cloak that completely concealed him. I followed him until we reached a stone cave, where he took off the cloak, and his appearance was very frightening. There were many people like him who pointed for me to enter the cave. So, I ran back as fast as I could until I found you searching for me in the forest." I asked him, "How did they look?" He said to me that their appearance was like that of humans, but their skin resembled that of lizards, and their eyes were completely black. After we returned home, my wife noticed the extreme fear on Naji's face, so she decided to take him to Sheikh Salim in the neighboring village. After her return, she told me that they still wanted to take him but could no longer kidnap him. I felt severe tension. I had thought that this problem was solved forever, but she told me that Sheikh Salim said the situation wasn't that dangerous. It's just a desperate attempt as long as he doesn't leave the house on nights of the full moon. One day, I woke up to the sound of the door opening. I hurried out of bed and went out of the room to find Naji standing in front of the door wanting to go out. Panic seized me because tonight is the night of the full moon. I screamed, "Naji!" He looked at me in panic and said, "Mom is outside, Father. I heard her calling me." I said to him, "Your mother is in the room, Naji. I told you not to leave the house for any reason." He said to me, "But I heard Mom's voice, believe me, Father." I told him, "Fine, go to your room now." One night, I heard Naji screaming. I rushed to him with my wife. He was terrified. I asked him, "What's wrong, my boy? Why all this screaming?" He answered fearfully, "When I was sleeping, I saw very frightening people and they wanted to take me with them." His mother said, "It's just a nightmare, dear." Naji replied, "It's the people I saw in the forest. Don't let them take me, Father." I slept beside him that night, but the matter kept recurring until we got used to it. Years passed this way, and Naji turned 15 while Lena was 10. One day after returning from the forest, my wife told me that Naji was extremely ill, so I rushed to his room. His temperature was high. My wife entered the room and told me she would take him to the doctor for treatment. She returned with Naji from the doctor and brought fever-reducing herbs. After a few days, Naji's health began to gradually improve. After 2 days of his recovery, my wife told me she would take him to the doctor again. It's clear that Naji is suffering from a skin disease, possibly from the heat. I will go see him about this. Look at his hand. I looked at his hand and saw a spot that looked strange and felt odd. I said, "Okay, go ahead, but don't be late." After she returned, she applied the herbs the doctor had given her to his hand, but the issue did not end. New spots began to appear on his skin. My wife went back to the doctor, and he gave her new treatment, telling her he had never seen a disease like this before, but the situation was worsening. The spots on his skin continued to spread, taking up most of his body. Not only that, but I noticed a change in some of his behavior. He no longer sits to eat with us. He doesn't eat at all. He's always anxious. I believe his psychological state is affected by his illness. One day, Naji came to sit beside me. He looked uneasy. I asked him, "What's wrong, Naji?" He told me, "Don't you notice, Father, that these spots look very much like their skin?" "Who are you talking about, my dear?" He said, "The people in the forest." I was shocked by his words. How did I not think of this before? I remembered what Naji had said 10 years ago. Their appearance is like that of humans, but their skin resembles that of lizards, and their eyes are completely black. These spots indeed look like lizard skin, but what does that mean? I will go tomorrow with Naji to Sheikh Salim. We haven't seen him in a long time. The next day we all went to Sheikh Salim, and I told him what had happened. When he saw the spots on Naji's skin, his face changed and he said, "This is what I feared." "What is it, Sheikh?" It was my wife who said that. Sheikh Salim replied, "I am not sure yet. I want to speak with you in private, Zain." We went to another room. I said to him, "What's wrong, Sheikh? You've worried us." He said to me, "I hope my suspicions are not justified. I believe they want him to be one of them. Every child born on the night of the full moon becomes one of them." I asked him, "How will they make him one of them when they couldn't kidnap him and bring him to them?" He said, "Perhaps he is transforming to become one of them on his own." We left the room and I found my wife filled with anxiety and asking me, "What is it?" I told her we had to go now. After we got back home, Naji entered his room and I told my wife what Sheikh Salim had told me. She cried bitterly. Days passed, and the situation was still very dire to the point that Naji no longer left the house after the skin spots spread to his face. One day after returning home from work, I found my wife crying intensely in her room. I asked her, "What is it?" She said with a voice filled with tears, "Your son ate a chicken." I asked, "What's the problem?" She said, "Your son ate a live chicken. I noticed that the number of hens had been decreasing lately, and today I went to feed the chickens. I saw him in their room. I saw him breaking the chicken's neck, drinking its blood eagerly, then tearing it with his teeth and eating it. I couldn't control myself and rushed to my room crying. I didn't even dare to talk to him. I went to Naji in his room. He got up from his bed when he saw me. I sat beside him. His condition was terrible. His hair was falling out in clumps and the spots had spread to the gaps caused by the hair loss. What is this? Hadn't his eyes been like his mother's? Since when have they been black? I asked him some casual questions about his condition. Then I left him, realizing that it wouldn't be long before Naji became one of them. On one night of the full moon, my wife was at her sick mother's with Lena, and I was alone in the house with Naji. After midnight, I woke up to a sound in the room. When I opened my eyes, I found Naji, and he looked very frightening. He was larger, and fangs were protruding from his mouth. I screamed and backed away from him in panic. I asked him anxiously, "What do you want, Naji?" He answered in a frightening voice I had never heard before. "I want food. I want blood." He approached me, looking taller than me now, and I stepped back until I pressed against the wall. Is this my end? Will I die at the hands of my son? I noticed my bag on the ground beside me. I quickly grabbed it, and when Naji saw the white dirt Sheikh Salim had given me, he backed away and left the room. After he left, I placed some of the white dirt at the door and around the bed. I cannot believe I am afraid of my son. After a few moments, I heard the sound of our goat. I opened the door, holding some white dirt in my hand, and saw Naji sinking his teeth into the goat's neck, drinking its blood. He was tearing its flesh and eating it with his teeth. I couldn't sleep that night, and I was convinced that my son had become a monster. In the morning, my wife and Lena returned, and Naji was sleeping in the yard with blood all over his mouth. When my wife saw him, she screamed. Naji woke up, and he was in his normal size and appearance from the previous day. Without saying a word, he entered his room. The following night, we placed the white dirt at the door of our room and Lena's room. Naji had become a real threat. I couldn't sleep as usual in the recent period. I heard the sound of the door opening. I opened the room door slightly and saw Naji leaving the house. I closed the door and looked through a small opening in the window. I saw him sitting on the ground in front of the house. Suddenly, he lifted his eyes and looked at the window, seemingly seeing me. In a flash, his face pressed against the window from the outside, staring directly into my eyes. I quickly backed away from the window, and after a few minutes, I looked again to find him sitting there, staring at me as though he didn't want me to see him. I drew a curtain over the window and went to sleep. In the morning, I woke up to the screams of the villagers. I went out to find them gathered around the house. I asked them in surprise, "What is it? Why are you gathered here?" One of the neighbors replied, "All the animals in the village died last night. And why are you gathering around my house?" Another responded, "To put it simply, because your son ate them." I expected this. No one but my son does such a thing, and he had been outside all night. But I told them, "And who told you it's my son? Did any of you see him?" Another person responded, "No, but we all know he is your son. He is a monster, and we all know this. Even if you do not control your son, we will kill him or you will leave the village." Then they dispersed. I had nothing to say to them. 2 days after this incident, Sheikh Salim came to our house to check on Naji's condition. He brought with him some books and the white dirt he used to draw boundaries around our house 15 years ago. He entered Naji's room. As soon as Naji saw him, he jumped from the bed, showing signs of fear on his face. Sheikh Salim approached him and placed some of the white dirt on his forehead. Naji screamed and cursed Sheikh Salim. I didn't realize what I was doing until I struck him on the face, and in a minute all of his remaining hair fell before me, and his eyes turned completely black. In a sudden rush, he ran out of the house, and I quickly followed but couldn't find him anywhere. It was as if he had evaporated. "What happened, Sheikh Salim? Where did Naji go? Why did you put that dirt on his forehead?" Sheikh Salim said, "Your son has become one of them, Zain. He did not leave because he hoped to find a victim here. He needed to feel threatened to leave." My wife began to cry intensely, striking her face and saying, "I want my son." And Lena was crying beside her, trying to comfort her. I asked him, "But we must get him back, Sheikh. I must get my son back." He said, "No, Zain, there is no way to return Naji. He has become one of them. We should have left him with them since he was an infant. The matter is not as we thought. They are not just a tribe who wants to take your children. This is a curse on your village and all its inhabitants. Anyone born on the night of the full moon transforms to become a monster, and if they do not take him, he will change while he is among you, and he will be a source of threat to your lives. This is your fate, and it will haunt you forever." Then he pointed to the books and continued, "These books confirm what I'm saying. They tell the history of your village and more than one experience for more than one person in different times who lived in this village. It is said that the original inhabitants of the village used black magic to achieve their revenge. 30 nights after your ancestors came to the village, one of the women gave birth to a child on a night of the full moon. But he was so monstrous that his parents could not bear to look at him. So they decided to get rid of him and threw him into the wilderness. After a while, another child was born like this, and his parents had to throw him into the wilderness, and people began to notice that the child born on a full moon night was only the one who turned into a monster. They resorted to magic to rid themselves of this curse, and they thought they succeeded in doing so because the babies were born normally, but they were kidnapped on the very night they were born. One night, a man was returning home and the villagers heard his screams. They went out to find him torn to pieces with some of his limbs missing. This incident happened more than once, and as these incidents repeated, they noticed that all of them occurred only when the moon was full. So they stopped going out on full moon nights, and the children born on this night are kidnapped, no matter how hard they tried to stop it. And every newcomer to the village suffers the curse and will never escape it. The injustices of your ancestors will pursue you, Zain. Those you fight and kill are nothing but your children and siblings born on the night of the full moon. After this night, I made an important decision. We would leave this village forever. I know it is a difficult decision, as we have nothing but this house that shelters us, and we do not know anywhere in the world except our village where we were born and spent our whole lives. I don't even know how to make a living other than cutting trees, but it is better than seeing my son eating human flesh. We began to pack our belongings in preparation for departure after 2 nights, to avoid the full moon nights. My wife didn't want to leave, but I convinced her that this is better, at least for Lena, and it is the best choice. After 2 days, I bought a horse with all the money I had, and when evening came, we moved away from the house. Lena rode the horse with our belongings while my wife and I walked. When we reached the edge of the village, the horse stumbled and threw Lena off. I helped her get up and put our belongings back on the horse, which refused to move and started braying loudly. I struck it to get it to move, but it wouldn't budge. I noticed someone moving quickly. I lowered Lena from the horse and told them to run quickly out of the village. My wife said, "What about our belongings and the horse?" I told her the horse wouldn't move, and we can't carry our belongings without it. We began to run quickly, but saw people whose features we couldn't distinguish in the darkness. They were tall. The shortest among them approached us. He appeared to be the height of an ordinary human. He said, "Didn't I tell you that anyone living in this village becomes cursed and that it will never leave?" I said in disbelief, "Sheikh Salim, what are you doing here? And why are you with them?" He laughed loudly and said, "Because I am their lord." I said to him, "Do you mean that you have been deceiving us all this time? But you helped us in many situations." He said to me, "You fool. I was helping you to get what I wanted." I said, "But why?" He replied, "I told you when your ancestors wronged my ancestors. They were expelled from their village, and you inherited the village. As for me, I inherited revenge. That's how justice is achieved." I tried to return, but I collided with tall figures behind me. My wife and Lena were crying and holding on to me. Sheikh Salim said, "Do not try to flee. You know the rules. Whoever knows the truth must die." I said, "Fine, kill me if you must. Just let my wife and daughter go." He said, "I haven't asked you for your last wish, don't worry. Tonight, you and your wife and daughter will die, along with all the villagers." He gestured with his hand, and they moved towards us. I felt like I was suffocating. I could no longer see anything, as though I had fallen into a deep well. In a police station in one of the cities. "Sir, dismembered bodies have been found in a village near the forest." "How many bodies were there?" "About 2,000. All the villagers are dead. It seems that there are ferocious animals in this forest.